dreams of free men have dealt with the sky for centuries, and many have been realized in recent years through science and technology. The airplane and the rocket brought the infinite reaches of the heavens within man's grasp. Nuclear energy offered promise of other benefits, but these great developments brought also the threat of extinction. Aircraft, atoms, and rockets have revolutionized modern warfare. Nuclear energy, with its terrible potential in the hands of our enemies, has forced the United States to work constantly on improved defenses against surprise attack. Nike missiles paced the missile age, leading first to the development of the Nike Ajax. Today, the larger, longer-ranging Nike Hercules, already on site to defend many major American cities, is replacing Nike Ajax as rapidly as existing Ajax sites can be converted and new Hercules sites built. The United States Army presents The Big Picture, an official report produced for the armed forces and the American people. Chatsworth, California. Like most small American communities, it is a friendly, busy town, 31 miles from the heart of downtown Los Angeles at the end of the San Fernando Valley. The people of Chatsworth, like people everywhere, work at their jobs, look after their children, carry on their civic responsibilities, and relax with their neighbors. Like so many small suburban communities in the Los Angeles area, Chatsworth actually falls within the outer limits of the city and enjoys many of its services. Utilities, fire and police protection, schools, roads, and other needs are served by Los Angeles. In Chatsworth, one will find most of the things which ensure its growth as a modern, progressive town. One will find, too, something else, high in the hills above the town, where men of the United States Army Air Defense Command work day and night to make sure that Chatsworth, like hundreds of other American communities, continues to grow in peace and freedom. The Nike Hercules Battery at Chatsworth is one of the many missile sites of the 47th Air Defense Artillery Brigade, which ring the Los Angeles area. Your Army, with the missiles and the men to provide defense against air attack, never relaxes its vigilance. Behind this Nike Hercules battery stands an elaborate defense system geared for the protection of the American continent. Let us go now with the big picture camera to the headquarters of the United States Army Air Defense Command at Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the foot of Pikes Peak. Here at Ent Air Force Base is the headquarters of the North American Air Defense Command, responsible for continental air defense. Army, Navy, and Air Force, as well as Canadian components, operate as integral parts of this command. The Army Air Defense Command is directed by Lieutenant General Charles E. Hart. The General's responsibility extends to Nike sites scattered from northern Maine to southern California, ringing each of our major industrial and population centers. General Hart, if you have a moment, sir, we'd like to ask you a question or two.
Why, certainly.
Do you feel, sir, that the present state of readiness of our Army Air Defense Network is adequate to meet the threat of any enemy attack?
I certainly hope so. The best way to answer your question, I feel, is to give you a rundown of what we actually have. Since 1953, we have had Nike Ajax, the country's first combat-ready surface-to-air missile on site. Since then, we have converted Ajax to Hercules. The Hercules is a bigger, faster, and more lethal weapon. It possesses both a nuclear and a conventional capability. So you can see the air defense business is never static. Every day sees an improvement from the day before. Every policy, training schedule, and weapon is geared to the current and the future threat, and not to the threat of yesterday. The Hercules is our latest answer to the current and future threat, and the best answer to the question regarding our operational readiness. It is an operational reality.
How many of these Hercules missiles does the Army Air Defense Command have, General?
The number varies from day to day. As the weapons come off the production line, they are shipped to our various sites, both those being converted from Ajax and at new locations, and incorporated into the overall Army Air Defense System.
Thank you very much, General Charles E. Hart. For a look at the mighty Hercules before it becomes a part of the Army's air defense arsenal, the big picture camera moves to Charlotte, North Carolina. At the Charlotte Ordnance Missile Plant, operated by Douglas Aircraft, Nike Hercules missiles are assembled on a mass production basis, not unlike cars or washing machines. Along the assembly line, highly skilled workers and technicians put the Nike Hercules together, one intricate component after the other. Despite the complexity of these weapons, they are easy to maintain and can operate with deadly efficiency against any target aircraft or formation of targets. Hercules is longer, heavier, and more than double the diameter of Ajax, but its velocity and extreme maneuverability high above the earth provide a lethal advantage over any hostile aircraft. Many thousands of hours of aeronautical and electronic research stand behind this mighty weapon. Scientists and engineers work constantly to improve, develop, and refine the principles incorporated in the Hercules. The missile has already proven itself against every target made available to it, demonstrating not only its effectiveness against present-day enemy planes, but any of the foreseeable future. History tells us that the Chinese had crude powder rockets as early as 3000 BC. A far cry from these electronic marvels with their built-in brain power. Even the least important part of the Hercules receives the same painstaking care in manufacture and assembly as the most complex electronic component. Precision governs the making of the missile as well as its use. Hercules is checked constantly by Army inspectors to make doubly certain that it meets all of the specifications of a combat-ready weapon. As with all Army personnel who work closely with missiles, this officer is a qualified expert in his field. Once off the assembly line, the new missiles are put through a rugged series of tests before being delivered to the Army. Completely assembled with the exception of the warhead it would carry into action, Hercules is ready for a ground-borne dress rehearsal. Rocket men spend many hours carefully going over the various systems which enable Hercules to be guided to its target swiftly and accurately. By the time the missile is ready for its final checkout, there have been as many tests and inspections as there are parts which make it up. It is ready now to do the job for which it was designed, if the Army ever needs it. A weapon of the future in the Army's hands today. Sealed, signed, and about to be delivered, Hercules is shipped in giant steel cans. The missiles are packaged in such a way that they will arrive at the missile site in perfect condition, ready for immediate final assembly and operational use. Some will be shipped to McGregor Range near Fort Bliss, Texas, where actual test firings are regularly made by the troops who man the missile sites. Crushing acceleration and searing heat of the Hercules splits the skies over southern New Mexico, where Army missile men see what their weapon can do. At nearby Fort Bliss, just over the state line in Texas, the Army trains the personnel required to man a Hercules site. Courses are given at the Fort Bliss School at every level. Just as the mighty Nike Hercules weapons are products of our latest advances in science and technology, so the men upon whom the entire mission of Army air defense depends are the very best, trained to the highest point of efficiency, and thoroughly grounded in every aspect of the Nike weapon system. When the conversion of Nike Ajax sights to Hercules began, entire batteries of men who had been schooled for Ajax were put through a special intensive course which qualified them to maintain, test, and fire the Hercules. They learned everything they needed to know about the care and operation of this solid-fuel supersonic giant. They studied and memorized thousands of small yet highly important details of the missile's inner workings. Every soldier receives a working knowledge of the intricate electronic circuits which make up the brain and the nerve system of Hercules and enable it to respond to the fire control network which guides its launching, flight, and target interception. One of the primary advantages of the Nike family has always been flexibility. When the conversion from Ajax to Hercules was undertaken, it was possible to integrate the new missile systems smoothly. Few modifications were needed. From radar, the electronic brain of the Hercules receives all the information it needs to make contact with a target. In the event of an actual attack, the nation's early warning system would be the first to pick up and follow enemy aircraft. If any appeared to be headed for an industrial area guarded by Hercules, target data would be transferred to the target acquisition radar, which would then lock the target tracking radar on the target and follow it until it was within Hercules range. Personnel who man the Hercules sites are familiar with all of the precision electronic equipment needed to send their missiles on a successful hunt. Some are necessarily expert in all phases of the maintenance and operation of radar equipment and electronic computing systems, the eyes and ears of Hercules. To coordinate the fire of many missile batteries around one population area, the Army has developed a master electronic brain able to collect and sort all data on approaching enemy targets. Called Missile Master, this mental monster is able to keep track of interceptor aircraft without duplication of effort and without endangering friendly airplanes engaging the enemy. In addition to the basic instruction all missile men receive and the advanced specialized instruction given to technicians and maintenance men, all regular crews train on their missiles and fire them once each year at McGregor Range. For the Hercules battery at Chatsworth, California, the day never ends. Captain Earl Duffy, commanding officer of the Chatsworth Battery, normally begins his duty day at 7 in the morning with a long ride up the winding road to the missile site. Following the same rigorous schedule of all Nike batteries, Chatsworth soldiers carry on their vigil without interruption. Nights, Sundays, and holidays will find crews from the Army's air defense units at their posts. Many of the married men in Captain Duffy's battery live in and around Chatsworth and make use of an old American custom, the carpool. To some observers, life at a Nike Hercules site might seem routine enough, but there is an inherent excitement in the assignment, a challenge posed by the specter of an unknown enemy, which keeps each man at the top of his form, ready for anything. This Hercules is fresh from the factory by way of an ordnance depot, and a crew under Sergeant First Class Harry Miller will settle it in its new home.
We work on the missiles here as they arrive at the site. We check them out in every particular to see if they're ready for flight. As a matter of fact, we even fly them, ground fly them, that is.
How do you ground fly a Hercules, Sergeant? Isn't that a little dangerous?
Not at all. Hercules never moves. But we are able to simulate missile flight for the purpose of checking out the different systems on the weapon. We can give Hercules all electronic commands it would normally get in flight and see how the missile responds. If there's anything wrong, we fix it.
Are your men on 24-hour duty, Sergeant?
We take turns staggering the shifts. For example, I was on last night. After I make one or two more checks, I'll knock off. Sergeant Clunkerman will take over the day shift.
While you get some sleep?
Not exactly. My wife's been after him for about a month to do the backyard, plant some grass. Also, the car needs washing. Maybe then some sleep.
Sergeant, you're an old artilleryman who specifically volunteered for Hercules duty. Why? Is it more exciting than any other?
It is for me. I'll be retiring from the service in a few more years, but not from rockets. I intend to use my Army experience in civilian life.
Thank you, Sergeant Harry Miller. In the administrative area of the Chatsworth site, many of the men who man the Hercules eat, sleep, and find their recreation. Facilities are as complete as space and efficiency permit, and although the men must go into town to have their hair cut, a small post exchange takes care of routine personal needs. But the main activity in this area is centered in the battery headquarters building, where the commanding officer has his offices. Captain Duffy's days don't always begin with problems, but they frequently do. During the night, one of the operating parts from the battery's radar system went out of order. The day crew repaired it with a standby component stocked at the battery, and the equipment never ceased operating. But now the standby component must be replaced. Maintaining its own stock of spare parts allows a missile battery of self-sufficiency vital to its mission. As commanding officer of the Chatsworth Battery, Captain Duffy directs the activities of more than 100 men in their highly specialized work.
Many of the men of Battery C have received extensive technical training in Army schools. Others come to us right out of basic. But this assignment is really an on-the-job education for all of us.
What occupies your soldiers most of the time, Captain?
Readiness. That's a 24-hour-a-day job. We run practice alerts often, and our maintenance people keep our missiles and electronics gear tuned up like fine racing cars. Last night, for example, we had a breakdown up on top of the mountain. Our people on duty repaired that immediately. Later this morning, a helicopter will bring out the spare parts to replace those we used last night.
Isn't this exceptional?
The breakdown was, the supply and maintenance are routine. We may not need that part again for a year, but we have to have it available.
Thank you, Captain Duffy. Oh, there is one other question we would like to ask.
Shoot.
How do the people of Chatsworth feel about having Hercules so close by the community?
Our reception here has been wonderful. But let me say that the best answer to that is to see for yourself. Ask them.
Captain Duffy? Sir, you want on the telephone.
I'm afraid you'll have to excuse me. You'll find any of the men ready and able to answer your questions.
Above us on the mountain is the IFC, or Integrated Fire Control Area, which houses most of the complicated electronic equipment needed to find the target and guide the Hercules. Here, the Nike air defense system never sleeps. The equipment performs tasks which man's mind cannot perform, and actually assumes the burden of sending all commands electronically to the missile in flight. The men who man the IFC center must keep every piece of their equipment in perfect operating condition at all times because of the enormous responsibility IFC bears. Lieutenant Wilbur Jenkins is in charge of this mountaintop control center.
Our equipment does the thinking for Hercules, just as it does for Ajax. Once we lock on a target, it can't hide, no matter how evasively or how fast or how high it may fly. We've got it in our sights once it turns up on our radar, which is long before it could bomb Los Angeles. The radar talks electronically, and our computer listening in on this conversation decides where Hercules should go and when it should go off.
And all of these operations can be practiced without ever firing a missile.
That's right, it's routine.
What exactly are these men doing, Lieutenant?
We had a minor breakdown and they repaired it. Now they'll find out exactly why this particular part failed us. It may have been a fluke, but it may have been something we can't prevent.
Thank you, Lieutenant Jenkins. The noise you hear above us is an Army helicopter circling overhead. The aircraft has responded to Chatsworth's call for immediate delivery of the needed radar parts. Brought from a supply center several miles away, the spare component arrives in less than half an hour. By truck through the city traffic, delivery would require half a day. On another stretch of concrete are the launchers, which hold the Hercules for firing. Emerging from the ground like some great chained bird of prey, 10,000 pounds of Hercules missile rises with grace and precision. Launcher crews drill constantly on every phase of their critical responsibility. Warrant Officer Melvin C. Smith is in charge of this group.
These men are checking out our launching equipment for Hercules. Much of this machinery is brand new, and we're constantly running routine checks to make sure that it's in perfect working order.
Mr. Smith, we see that Hercules comes up from underground. Why are the missiles stored there?
For safety to some extent. It's also for practical reasons. The Hercules is big, and it's expedient for us to find the most efficient means of storage, where the missile's out of the way, but handy for firing.
Thank you very much, Warrant Officer Smith.
Not at all. Raise launcher one.
Hundreds of American communities have become accustomed to Nike Ajax batteries nearby, and also the more modern Hercules. How does a community feel about these powerful weapons in its midst? Defense against enemy attack is one thing, but when it brings powerful weapons of the future close to the homes and businesses of Americans, well, but let's go to Chatsworth for the answer. The Chatsworth Lumber Company is owned and operated by Ben Boydston, recent president of the Chatsworth Chamber of Commerce.
I'm glad the Army is up there on the mountain, and I think the fact that they are there and in other places around our city would prevent any air attack on Los Angeles.
the center of town at the Chatsworth Elementary School, Mrs. Laverne Lee, for 34 years a teacher and principal, is responsible for the education of Chatsworth's children. Mrs. Lee has this to say.
I think it's good for our children to know what is being done for their safety. They understand about fire and police protection. The protection Nike gives us is no different.
Every Tuesday, the Chatsworth Rotary meets at Al Brain's restaurant. A resident of Chatsworth for more than 30 years, Mr. Brain is an active community leader.
Frankly, I don't favor any kind of missile. I wish they didn't have to be here. But I know they're necessary, and I would rather have more missiles than I would have enemy bombers.
Like all American communities, Chatsworth is proud of its churches. Men such as the Reverend Charles Hughes serve the spiritual needs of townspeople and soldiers alike.
As an American and a minister, I abhor the whole idea of war. But when our freedom to live and worship as we please is threatened, we cannot be defenseless. In these troubled times, the gravest threat to our security would be an attitude of complacency. Some of the boys from the Missile Battalion are members of our congregation, and I know them well. The service they render is not only an important service, but it is also a necessary one.
The honorary mayor of Chatsworth is a distinguished citizen whose public life has long represented the best tradition of American ideals to millions of children throughout the world. No one has a deeper interest in his community than Roy Rogers.
You know, what we have in this country is worth protecting at any cost, in dollars or sacrifice. And what I know of our air defense around the nation, our government has provided us with the very best possible protection. As mayor of Chatsworth, I can only express what I think most of the people feel. Our sincere thanks.
And our thanks, too, to Roy Rogers, the citizens of Chatsworth, and the men of Battery C for helping the big picture tell the story of Nike Hercules and its role in the defense of an American community, one of the most important missions in the Army. The Big Picture is an official report for the armed forces and the American people. Produced by the Army Pictorial Center. Presented by the Department of the Army in cooperation with this station.